has been kind to The Thing. When it was released in 1982, it flopped. The movie barely made up its budget, was critically defaced, and John Carpenter's career was incinerated. Audiences chose a more sentimental, much more optimistic, and much less gory alien movie playing in theaters at the same time, leaving The Thing in the cold.
As a matter of fact, we came out 2 weeks after E.T. came out.
That's what it was.
And theirs was sweet and ours was mean.
Who Goes There is the short story The Thing is based on. This story has been adapted into a movie 3 times, in 1951, 1982, and 2011. The oldest and newest versions are expired products of their time. 1951's The Thing from Another World features what is clearly a guy in a suit. The 2011 remake prequel's monster is overlaid with cheap CGI. Only the 1982 adaptation has remained timeless. What distinguishes this thing from the other things and the horror genre as a whole is its commitment to realism. The special effects in this movie are so convincing that even if you learn the tricks that made them possible, the illusion still holds up.
I mean, that was the big job, was to convince the audience that this thing is real. And we might have convinced them a little too much.
Those same effects that caused people to walk out of the theater back in 1982 are now held up as the gold standard.
Some of the greatest practical special effects ever put on a movie theater screen.
So how did they do it? The answers include an assortment of clever tricks, including reverse photography, a guy with no arms, and Twinkies. Creating the monster from The Thing was a unique challenge because it isn't just one monster. If it takes the form of any living creature it kills, then what does it look like? The grotesque designs of The Thing were conceived by 2 people, comic book artist Mike Ploog and special makeup effects creator Rob Bottin. Ploog would draw the storyboards while talking with Bottin, who would later supervise and design the physical creations with his crew of artists and technicians. Bottin was the one to come up with the idea that when The Thing is mid-transformation, it's a composite of all the creatures it's imitated throughout the universe, leaving speculation for a wide breadth of imaginative designs. The dog kennel sequence establishes the amorphous nature of The Thing. This dog thing is an elaborate hand puppet with a radio-controlled face. It's the one effect of the movie that wasn't designed by Rob Bottin. Since Bottin was overloaded with work, Stan Winston and his studio were called in as a favor.
I remember looking at myself in the mirror and going, how easily can I puppet something if this is the head? And then from that snapshot, we designed the dog thing over that. So came up with a concept, designed to that concept, and literally built a really cool hand puppet with an animatronic face.
Bottin himself wore the foam latex appendages for these insert shots. These tentacles are small whips, also operated by Bottin. The goo being shot at the dog is carbachol, a thickening agent also used in Twinkies. The slime and blood in the movie are strawberry jam, mayonnaise, cream corn, gelatin, bubblegum, KY jelly, or carbachol.
I remember Rob always coming in, it seemed like, with more of that gel. He said, but it's going to be fine, John. As soon as I put the gel on, it's going to come to life.
A challenge that cinematographer Dean Cundy had to face was lighting these effects. There needed to be enough light so that you could see the effect, but not too much.
Lighting it carefully so that it looks real, so that there's a you don't give away the tricks, the little seams and the paint and the wires and all of the things that are necessary to make it work.
As beautifully grotesque as these creations are, they can only really come to life with sound. In keeping with Rob Bottin's concept for The Thing, its hellish screeches were created through a process of experimenting with animal noises, speeding them up, slowing them down, reversing them, changing the pitch, trial and error until just right. To introduce the dog thing, they combined bird calls with a pig squeal, and then modified it until it sounded just like a demon. To give actor Charles Hallahan's torso a mouth, the actor sat inside a table with a perfect replica of his torso hanging off of him, faultless down to the chest hair.
I know what my chest hair pattern looks like from looking at myself in the mirror for 50 years. I'm shocked at how accurate it is.
The body is a fiberglass frame with a skin made of foam latex. A hydraulic mechanism opened and closed the chest cavity, revealing acrylic teeth. As the defibrillator and unfortunate hands of Richard Dysart's character made their way into the mouth, they cut to a different angle, where Richard Dysart's arms were replicated.
Making it out of Jell-O, right? We made the arms out of Jell-O. We had wax bones built into the arms. And we had rubber veins and gelatin veins and all this stuff, so it was like, you know, living tissue.
This wide shot is not Richard Dysart, but Joe Corone, a double amputee wearing an ultra-realistic mask of Dysart's face.
His arms were actually cut off here, right in a injury. We glued the gelatin arms onto his arm. And when this thing slams shut, it actually rips right through the jello, punctures the plastic veins, which sends blood flying all over the place.
What really sells this mask is frequently cutting back to a close-up of Dysart's performance. You'd never guess that the wide shot isn't the real him, because every second or so, there he is. This floating spider head is a marionette operated mostly by wires. They moved its head through a hole in a false ceiling, while its facial expression was radio-controlled. Then for the separating head. A shaft of steel attached to the head was pushed by a crew member, revealing a neck filled with a toxic concoction of bubblegum and melted plastic.
This is all operated from underneath. It's a phony floor and we're just pushing everything out.
The tongue grabbing the table is a clever bit of reverse photography. What they did is pull the tongue into the mouth and then reverse the film so it looked like it was lashing out. You can see that they did the same reverse photography trick for other tentacle sequences throughout the film. This head with spider legs is remote controlled. The head's got little wheels underneath it. The motor is directly connected to the legs, so the faster the speed, the faster the legs crawl.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
In the blood test scene, DP Dean Cundy gives us a subtle hint as to who the thing is. If you look closely, you can see a small gleam of light in every person's eyes, all except for Palmer's. When MacReady burns blood and the thing jumps out in pain, notice how Kurt Russell's hand looks a little artificial. That's because it's a fake arm with a small inflatable sac in it. Similar air sacs, known in the movie business as air bladders, were put inside the Palmer puppet as the thing reveals itself. Check out the puppet's eyeballs. For this shot, originally they planned to replicate the set inside a camera centrifuge, a 360-degree spinning camera rig famously used for this shot in 2001. The plan was to have a stuntman run while rapidly moving the cylinder 180 degrees, leaving the camera crew upside down, while the stuntman was standing upright on the ceiling, which was now actually the floor. Eventually, the budget forced them into a cheaper alternative, a stuntman dropping into frame onto a mattress covered with a thin layer of wood. The burning monster here is stuntman Anthony Cicere, who specialized in full-body burns just like this one. If you see a guy on fire in an 80s movie, it's probably Anthony. He would wear a special gel and fire suit, be set aflame, then put out at a carefully rehearsed time. The stunt is especially dangerous because he can't breathe for the entirety of the stunt. If he breathed in, that'd mean instant death, as the flames would singe his lungs. Since we're outside now, it's worth asking, how did they sell Antarctica? By shooting in 3 locations. All the interiors were shot in sound stages in California. To make the characters seem cold, they refrigerated the sound stages to 40 degrees Fahrenheit and humidified the air, a direct contrast to the Californian heat outside. The helicopter chase in the opening was shot in Alaska. The rest of the exteriors were shot in Stuart, British Columbia, Canada, because it was considered the snowiest town in the world.
My favorite thing in this whole picture is to be able to be up here in a location like this and just be able to shoot up here.
The mechanical effects of the thing, from the explosions to the snowstorms, are the work of Roy Arbogast. To simulate a snowstorm, the crew would throw snow out of trash cans into big fans pointed at the actors. For the explosions, the crew would be nowhere near them, as these cameras were remote. The floor being broken up Bugs Bunny style is once again the work of Arbogast.
What they did was they built actually like a train track underneath the floorboards. They put like a huge ball, metal ball on it, and they actually dragged it with a huge cable mounted to a winch that actually was a high-speed winch. So they just flipped the thing and then this ball would roll underneath and just break all the floorboards up.
This brings us to the biggest creation of the film, a mega thing made of 300 pounds of foam rubber, operated by 63 technicians, pulling cables, operating hand puppets, and tugging fishing line. This sequence was originally a longer and more complex action scene. Originally, the dog was going to jump out of the orifice and chase Kurt Russell. Animator Randy Cook spent 2 months animating this using stop motion animation. Ultimately, it was cut out because the footage didn't blend in convincingly with the live action. The thing used pretty much every conceivable special effect at the time. In the words of Bottin, if you can name it, we used it. Lucky for us, it was created in the early 80s, before easy access to CGI and after the invention of many of its practical tricks.
You know, people actually think that you know, the imaging and the special effects and the creature work or whatever hold up to this day, even in the light of the fact that, you know, there are computer graphics and things now. And I think part of the reason for that is that it's, you know, you just can't beat wild imagination, you know. And no matter how you do it, as long as it's executed very well, you know, you just can't pierce through the magic.
Of course, no matter how realistic and imaginative the monster is, it wouldn't have been scary if it wasn't in this movie, in the walls of Bill Lancaster's screenplay and John Carpenter's direction. In Botine's words, the story is scary, and then the monster is just the period at the end of the sentence. In other words, if the thing is scary, it's the way John built suspense. In broad daylight, monsters are just latex and foam, but in The Thing, the monster is real. Since 1982, the public reaction to The Thing has defrosted somewhat.
Maybe we'll just warm things up while we're out here.
It's hard to imagine why it wasn't immediately praised for being the masterstroke it is. One of the film's main criticisms was that it showed too much. It was deemed a sacred rule that you shouldn't show the monster until the end. That way, the imagination conjures up a creature scarier than any possible creation. But what if the monster is more imaginative than anything most people could think of? What if it's the brainchild of a comic book artist and special effects nerd? Each creation is a nightmarish work of art. There is a morbid fascination that's shared between the characters and the audience. You want to examine it and burn it at the same time. Despite the criticism it received, The Thing isn't constant, mindless gore. Botine's effects are used selectively, an occasional stab amidst the tension. Most of the movie is long stretches of paranoia, standoffs, reasoning, and arguing. After John Carpenter's Halloween was a success, a wave of cheap imitations followed, filled with every possible horror cliché, from cheap jump scares to unconvincing characters. When Carpenter made The Thing, he did all he could to subvert those tropes. There is no body in the closet, no guy in a suit, only the guy standing next to you, who you've known for years, who may or may not be a monster from outer space.